containers are down 30% in April. 30% is an insane number. 30% of shipping containers. That is 30% of consumer goods that would have went into the country is now waiting. Now, they're not canceling the PO. They're asking the factory to hold on to it until they know where things land, because it's so obvious we're in a tit-for-tat trade war where things will at some point land. Will it be in 1 week, 2 weeks, a month? Every month that goes by is insane. You might start seeing empty shelves in retail stores because they are canceling shipping containers.
Welcome to the DTC Insider podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisentul.
Hey, welcome to another episode. I'm Brian Roisentul, your host, and today I'm super excited to have a friend of the house, a friend of this podcast, and to have for the second time, Izzy Rosensweig, founder of Portless here on the pod. If there's one person in the industry who can shed light on the tariffs, is him. Izzy, thanks for being on the show once again.
Brian, thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very excited to be back and lots to talk about in this very fluid and evolving space.
Yes, I know. And I'm super excited about this episode because, timing is perfect. And before going into the tariff, which is today's topic, what everyone wants to know more about, why don't you introduce yourself and introduce Portless as well?
Thank you. So I'm the CEO and founder of Portless. At Portless, we take a very different approach to supply chain. So a typical brand would manufacture, let's say, t-shirts. They might manufacture 10, 20,000 t-shirts. They're going to lay out all that money up front. They're going to put on a boat, and they got to wait 45 to 60 days before it even gets into the U.S. Then it gets to the U.S. Specific in today's world, you're going to pay import tax the day it gets into the U.S. So if you have $1 million of worth of goods coming to the United States, you're going to have to write a check for $1 million of taxes on or maybe more, 1.4 million, based on 145% taxes, day one. But that's the world we live in. So bad cash flow, that's traditional supply chain. And Portless, we take a different approach. We say, don't put it on a boat. Keep it near your factory. We have 2 facilities in China, another facility in Vietnam. We'll get it a day later, 2 days later at a maximum. That means you've done production. You don't need to buy 6 months of inventory at a time. You can buy 2 months of inventory at a time or 6 weeks. Move it to us. And as you're selling, you can make more. So a couple benefits there. And when we get your customer's order, we'll have it delivered on an average of 6 days across the US. Local experience, USPS tracking number, USPS driver. Customer gets a USPS tracking number within 24 hours. So the consumer has a very normal experience, this very normal DTC experience. And the brand has multiple benefits. One, their inventory to cash. They can start selling stuff days post-production. You can lower the amount of money you have in inventory at any given time because you can restock so quickly. And in this new crazy world, tax deferment. You don't need to pay taxes once it hits our facility. You only need to pay taxes as the single order enters the United States. And we help do all the taxes. We pay the taxes for you. We lay it out, and then we collect it on our invoicing. Massive cash flow advantages, massive tax deferment advantages, and it just allows brands to run much healthier and more efficient. So that's what we do at Portless.
So, I want to get into today's topic now. What for those who are not very clear, because maybe they heard the word tariff, maybe they know what it is, maybe they don't. For those who are not that clear, because there's a lot of misinformation as well, right? So what are these new tariffs? And let's start there if you want.
100%. So I'm actually going to go a little rewind a little bit before Trump.
Okay.
So there's 2 things to keep in mind. There is the de minimis rule, Section 321, which 25% of the largest Shopify stores and many, many thousands of smaller stores used until today. And then there is normal tariffs on normal supply chain. We'll talk about both of them. So in September of 2024, Biden administration said, heads up, everyone, we plan to remove Section 321. We don't want brands to be able to ship goods and get it import duty free into the country. We want that to be in the past. But he was going through Congress. And when you go through Congress, things take time. You have to submit to Congress. There needs to be a 60-day comment period. And then there needs to be reviews and you do a new version and then another 60-day. That was the direction this was going. And that's honestly the correct way of changing taxes in the United States. But then Trump came into office and says, you know what? I got no patience. I'm not waiting for a Congress approach. I'm going what he calls the Emergency Act approach. The president does have the right, based on an emergency, to roll out an Emergency Act based on what he thinks is a national security threat against the country. He used fentanyl. He said, well, fentanyl is coming to the country from China, Mexico, and Canada. Is it really true from Canada? I could argue not really. But there's enough there to say, I am going to roll an emergency act and I don't need to wait for Congress. And then he removed de minimis immediately on February 5th. It went away on February 5th. And he actually brought it back on February 7th because the CBP, the Cross-Border Patrol, did not have the systems to handle the new method of entry into the country. So that is that. So right now that's delayed till May 2nd. So right now, de minimis is still around until May 2nd, but it's very clear it's going away over the long period of time. Now on May 2nd, it's being removed just for China and Hong Kong. So goods manufactured in China and Hong Kong. Meaning I don't care where you ship it from. I don't care if you ship it from Mexico, Canada, or Europe. If it's manufactured China, Hong Kong, it can no longer use de minimis on May 2nd. However, in the executive order, it also said, by the way, we plan to remove de minimis from every country around the world. So I don't care if you manufacture, right now, if you manufacture in Vietnam, you can still use it after May 2nd. But the direction is when systems are ready, we'll remove it from every country around the world. Now, what does that mean? Why are systems ready just for China, not the world? Are systems really ready? We don't know. But that is the status quo today. For
those who are not aware with what that section actually does or allows brands, to do, is it like imports under $800 they can avoid taxes if they import things under $800 or so?
Correct. So there's a law since the 1930s, and the value of that dollar amount increased over time. But the law is if a package is going from outside the country into the United States, and as of most recently, that value is, if the retail value is under $800, it is import duty free. That is the law. It's not a loophole, it's the law. So companies like Shein and Temu have leveraged it, but massive American companies have also been leveraging it by shipping goods from Mexico and Canada into the United States. So it's been around for a very, very long time. So while the import tax aspect of this model is going away, that is actually not the core advantage of what many brands are using this for. So as I mentioned before, most brands that are doing, let's call it between 2 to 150 million, if you're not publicly traded, you care about cash. Cash flow puts more businesses into bankruptcy than profit margin does. Because if you can't, especially as you scale, if you cannot control your cash flows, you're not going to have what to pay rent and your employees. So in this model, while de minimis will go away, the import tax aspect will go away, you can still use this model. You'll just have to pay import tax. Yes, you'll pay import tax, but you got to pay import tax no matter what. If you're bringing it by boat, you're bringing it through our model, it doesn't make sense. Now you always have to pay import tax. So at a minimum, you can at least defer the taxes in our model until when it actually crosses into the country. Versus you're bringing it by a boat, you have to write that check on the first day. So de minimis, the law of de minimis, which has been around for 100 years, the import tax savings aspect will go away, but you could still continue to use the direct supply chain model and have all the agility of being near your factory, less inventory, not needing to pay tax until you're actually sold the goods to your end consumer. So that part still will live beyond May 2nd and is still a massive advantage for now even big brands because they don't want to pay import tax day one. But the import tax savings, that goes away May 2nd if you manufacture in China.
Here's the brutal truth. Right now, you're probably paying tariff on every single item in your warehouse before you even made the sale, right? That means your cash is just sitting there, trapped in inventory that might not even sell. Not exactly a recipe for success, right? But what if I told you that there's a smarter way? With Portless, you only pay tariff when an order ships after you've been paid by your customers. That means free up working capital instantly, turn inventory into cash faster than ever before, and completely eliminate the risk of paying tariff on unsold stock. Here's how it works. Portless helps you ship directly from China to your customers' doorsteps in just 5 to 8 days. Yes, just like Shein does it. You get access to your inventory days after manufacturing, keep less stock on hand, and only pay duties on what actually sells. No more guessing games, no more cash flow nightmares, just smarter, faster scaling. Ready to turn tariffs from a liability into an advantage? Schedule your free strategy call today and keep more working capital in your business. Head on over to portless.com and tell them the DTC Insider sent you. Do you know what the percentage is like for the Minimis that brands will need to pay from now on?
So now we're moving into the trade war. So for the longest time, everyone thought Trump will just fight against de minimis, but he's fighting the world. now that it's April 11th and there keeps to be a little more clarity as time goes on, at one point it looked like he wanted 30-40% taxes in some of the biggest countries around the world, India, Vietnam, etc. And that's crazy. That is unsustainable. But he did come back and he made it clear, at least for non-China manufactured goods, there's a path here. And he lowered those taxes to 10%. Now, is 10% the floor or the ceiling? According to what you hear in the media and what his people are saying is the floor. So we don't know where things will land. Every country might be unique because there's not only reciprocal, because it wasn't like, for example, Singapore has no taxes on American goods, right? So he also looks at trade
It's a
imbalances.
deficit, right? Is that the difference between the deficit, the import-export deficit, right?
So that was
how
another
they
calculation, yes. So there was some type of mathematical equation that if America is buying 100 billion from one country but selling them 40 billion, he's like, I don't care if you have no taxes on me. I consider a trade deficit to be an unequal balance of taxes. So I don't know where things will land. Maybe he'll want countries to buy more from America. Maybe not. It is unclear. Because one thing that people don't talk about is the trade deficit in physical goods. It's not in services. Like you have Hollywood putting movies around. You have Google around the world. If you include that, I can't argue that the trade deficit is really that different.
Wow,
Physical goods.
I haven't ever thought of that.
Yeah, it's people don't talk about it. But if you go a little deeper, you could argue services like Google and Facebook touches the high earners of America. Trump is fighting for blue collar America, and blue collar America doesn't work for Google, right? They might be farmers, they might be steel makers. So I think there's many ways to slice and dice this. But what is clear is he's looking to make a deal, which is great news for anyone manufacturing outside of China. China is a little unclear. So China, now you have the whole world trying to do deals with America, and China's the only one that tariffs went up. So what does Trump want with China? No one knows. Well, he's giving a little bit of inkling because you got two tough guys. You got President Xi, and they're both fighting to be the rules of the free world, right? So President Xi is trying to play tough guy. You fight me, I fight you. There's also more of a Chinese culture thing. Like, I'm not going to be bullied. And I get it. No one wants to be bullied here. And Trump is like, hey, we're the consumers of the world. You're going to have to come to us. So you got a little bit of a tough guys on both sides, which is not ideal for negotiations. But he is saying in interviews like, hey, President Xi is a friend of mine. And where we are today is not his fault. It's previous president's fault. I'm hoping he's saying those words because it means he does want some type of deal. Is it going to be zero? Probably not. Is it going to be where it was prior to Trump coming into administration? Probably not. Because he wants... He gave, and his administration is giving guidance, they expect to generate revenue from tariffs. I think now it's generating around 100 billion. Their target is 300 to 600 billion. So mathematically, that's a big jump. So there's still going to have to be tariffs around the world if we hit those targets that they're setting. So I expect it to be tariffs more than there was before. I don't think it's going to be 145%. It might go higher until the negotiation is done, but it feels like they are going down the path of a settlement. Now, there may be exclusions because you have Trump saying there's certain things that are national security. I want semiconductors in the United States. I want pharmaceutical in the United States. I want maybe auto industry. He might see that as a national security. So I doubt he's going to fight clothing because clothing, is not exactly a high-paying manufacturing job, and you need expertise, and you need raw materials, you need fabric mills. They simply don't exist. It'll take 30 years to build it out. But semiconductors with enough investment, and it's a high technical, he might want that in America no matter what. So even in the world where it feels like there's going to be higher than previous Trump administration tariffs to generate 300, 600 billion of revenue, that's their target. Not as high as it is today, because now it's insane. It's pretty much an embargo. So I would imagine somewhere where the mathematics will work, that they will generate 300 billion plus of import duties. With exclusions of certain industries, they're going to want no matter what in the United States, and they could play tariffs to get that. So that's kind of where it feels like the world is going.
So a breakdown for those watching the video version, tariff are here on the floor, or we're here on the floor, now we're through the roof. We think that they are going to be somewhere in the middle, but in the meantime, brands are going nuts, and consumers are going nuts. And it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Right? So, and it's been like, 2025 is off to not to a great start. I mean, it was first, of course, Trump, was elected last year, started, the presidency again in January. TikTok ban sale thing, brands didn't know whether that was going to be a thing or not. The tariff things, they said yes, they said no, then they say yes again, but no, only for China. But in the meantime, I see many brands already reacting to it. Some are increasing prices, some are not and trying to get more market share. Some others are increasing the prices, but with a separate item at checkout that says, Trump tariff or tariff without mentioning Trump fees. Some of them even in the product because they add it as a product, and some even use I saw the Trump hair, blonde hair as the product image, Trump fees or something like that at checkout. But the point is that many have two sides of the equation as many, it's polarizing, right? Because some brands already, those brands that already started increasing prices, many others fight back and say, why did you increase prices already if you haven't paid for that? And some say, well, it's into the mix, right? I know that the next big thing is going to be crazy. We don't know where it's going to be, so we need to adjust. So I want to focus on this situation, what's happening right now with price increases, because I've heard from some brands that Chinese factories or suppliers have already increased their prices already. So that's why some brands are increasing their prices already as well. So what do you see there?
Okay, lots of good topics here. I haven't heard of any factories increasing prices. I've heard of factories not willing to negotiate. Some factories are negotiating and sharing the burden with the brand. But at this level, that was when it was 20%. At 140%, there's no room. It's kind of an embargo. You're basically saying you can't do business. But what we've seen a lot of brands do is they're not changing prices for inventory already in the States. So if you already have inventory sitting, they're trying to slowly sell off that inventory and trying to delay it. We're also seeing people cancel shipping containers. Shipping containers are down 30% in April. 30% is an insane number. 30% of shipping containers. That is 30% of consumer goods that would have went into the country is now waiting. Now, they're not canceling the PO. They're asking the factory to hold on to it until they know where things land, because it's so obvious we're in a tit-for-tat trade war where things will at some point land. Will it be in 1 week, 2 weeks, a month? Every month that goes by is insane. You might start seeing empty shelves in retail stores because they are canceling shipping containers. So what we're seeing is brands delaying bringing in goods. They are slowly raising prices because as much as you want to say, and I think you're in the marketing world, right? You run a marketing agency?
Yes.
You're in the marketing world, Brian? Yeah. So I think what brands have to realize is it's not as simple as I'm taxed, I'm raising prices. Well, what's going to happen to your CAC? What's going to happen to your conversion rate? Or you could raise the price all you want, but if you're not doing it strategically, your CAC goes out the window. And if you're dependent on paid media, that's not so simple. So we're seeing some brands start to take away free shipping. They start to add. Now, free shipping is a nice perk, but many people make you pay for shipping. And now that's a way to start generating revenue that will hurt conversion rate a little bit, but people aren't shocked to see shipping. Then there's other softwares that they're pricing engine softwares. Telegem, I believe it's called, is one that I know of. They'll help you A/B test. Start A/B testing. Where is it? Keep into the, if you're $17.99, A/B test $19.99. If you're $19.99, A/B test $24.99. You got to start testing, but sticker shock is not going to help you. You could do it, but then your ads might go out the window, or you're lucky. So what we're seeing is try to optimize slowly over the next little bit. Try to use your current inventory where you didn't have to pay those crazy taxes to start optimizing. And by the time you need to bring a new inventory, either A, the tariffs have settled and now there's a deal and it is wherever it may land, or B, you figured out how to raise your prices slowly and you found the most optimal price. So that's what we're seeing from a pricing perspective. There is a supply chain perspective, there's balance sheet strategies you can do, and then there's P&L strategy you can do. But at least from a pricing point, that's what we're seeing brands do.
And you said in the beginning of on this answer, let's say that some brands are trying to go, let's say, to split this increase with their factories. So what do you mean by that? Are they doing half of the increase, or let's say a percentage of the increase? Are they giving factories net 30, net 60, or more room for brands to, pay longer terms?
Yeah, we've seen it more around the discount of goods. So when it was 20% tariffs, or maybe one point was 10% tariffs, we saw them say, okay, we'll give you an 8% discount on our thingy. So we're going to take hit on our gross margin, and then you'll probably get a hit on gross margin, but at least we'll both survive. But once I'm beyond that, factory, there's only so much good discounts you can give, right? So I think
Exactly.
there's if you haven't negotiated with your factory in a long time and you were originally quoted in US dollars, well, the US dollars have massively increased in value in the last 2 years. So definitely from RMB to a USD, there's negotiation room in the last 2 years. But if you negotiated already in the last, let's say, 12 months, then you're already at the best USD conversion rate. Then you got to be like, hey, you're willing to give, take a hit. We take a hit. We both take little hits and we survive. But that will only take you so far. The type of import duties happening today is there's no more room to give.
Okay. So it's clear, there's the minimis exemption, there's, the global tariffs. What can brands do to avoid paying? You said that, 30%, this is crazy, as you said, 30% of containers are, let's say, on hold in Chinese territory. So that's going to hit hard, as you said. But what's the other option? Because brands need to sell, need revenue besides profit. They need to sell. So what can they do that is not holding their containers in China?
So there's a few things. So we've seen a lot of our brands, because in our model, Portless, a few things. One, they have the balance sheet perspective, good cash flow, but we ship to 55 countries. It's cheaper to ship to Europe than it is to the States. And it's easier to do business in Europe. Crazy thing to say this out loud, that it's easier to do business in Europe than it is in the United States right now. But it is. It's a fact. UK is an incredible market. Germany, France, incredible markets. Australia, incredible markets. Canada. So we're seeing brands selling into international markets because it's easier to do business there. Wild thing to say, but it's a fact. So that's one thing, ramping up international expansion. Second thing is what we're seeing brands is optimizing in place, because we don't know where things will land yet. And if you too quickly start jumping into other countries' manufacturing, it might be a little too quick because you don't know where things are going to land. And the ecosystems in India and Vietnam are good, but they're nowhere near as good as China. So, for example, we have one brand that in 2016, they're in the bike business. I was talking to a guy that owned a CFO of the business. His competitors moved to Vietnam or other countries, and they stayed in China. They got market share because the quality that came out of the other countries was nowhere as good as the quality of China. So just jumping to another country too fast is actually very risky. Wait for things to settle and then make decisions based on where the long-term direction will point to you. Other things you could do is making sure you have the right HS codes. Like we had another brand that used to sell microwaves. Microwaves were taxed pretty high. But over the course of about 5 years, they kept adding tech to it. And before you knew it, it became an air fryer. The air fryer capabilities. Well, the tax rate in an air fryer is very different tax rate than a microwave. So if you made changes, another one was a garbage can. There was a garbage can that was manual, and then over years they added an electronic component. Now it's an engineered machine. Very different tax rate. So making sure you have the right HS codes for your product that it is today.
What's an HS code?
The HS code is an identifying. An HS code, every single item that's imported in the United States needs to have an identifying number, and there's an HS code database that the CBP has. So it's a 10-digit number, and it basically defines what you're bringing to the country. So the CBP knows how to tax you. Every HS code equals a tax rate. So if you had a garbage can that didn't have any electronic components, your 10-digit tax ID was identified as a garbage can with no technical aspect to it. But if you updated that, now you're selling a garbage can which is electric, it's a different ID, it's a different number, and therefore a different tariff rate. So making sure you're doing your research, that you've updated your HS codes to properly identify your product, which may have different tax rate that you thought. That's one aspect. There's another aspect that people are, and you should do all this with trade lawyers. Find yourself a trade lawyer if you're large enough. There's another aspect, something called tariff engineering. So there's a really big, I think it's Skechers, but I don't remember, it might be a different brand, that has on the sole of their shoes, more than 50% of the sole has like a soft fuzzy top. I forgot what the name of that fuzz thing is. And by doing so, they did it purposely. It allowed them to legally change their HS code from a shoe to a slipper. Legally, that is a slipper. Looks like a shoe, feels like a shoe, legally it's a slipper. And their tariff rate went from over 20% to 6%. That's called tariff engineering. Yeah, you look at your product. What could I change in my product that the customer won't mind, but will give me a very different tax rate?
So where can brands, I mean, maybe it's me and brands knowing, I don't know, but where can brands look into these things that they can easily tweak that doesn't affect the quality of their products, or they don't need to change countries for factory or anything like this? Where can they check that?
They should get a trade lawyer on their retainer. So again, trade lawyers, they're not cheap, but if you're a business that does revenue, maybe it's $1,000 an hour, but over a few hours, a few $1,000s, you can save a lot of money. So it's definitely something. Trade lawyers will look at your product, look at the specs, and say, like, they'll have people inside their law firms be like, hey, you're in this business, you might want to tweak it. Do you think you can handle that tweak or stuff like that? But those are where the conversations happen.
So to settle something, for the audience and for me as well, it's our tariff. Like, is the origin country the country in which you manufacture the product, or the one that is the previous country before entering the U.S.?
Great
for
question.
The tariff to apply?
Great question. Country of origin is where the most value of the product was put together and manufactured. And I'll give you, there's a lot of gray area, and I'll give you some black and white areas. A black and white area is if you manufacture clothing, let's say you buy raw materials from China, but you manufacture your t-shirt in Vietnam, you took the raw materials, you made a t-shirt out of it, that is legally country of origin. That is manufactured in Vietnam. Now, I don't care if you take that product and boat it to France and then sell it into the United States, country of origin is Vietnam. Same thing with China. You can have a beautifully designed high-end luxury good. If it's manufactured in China and then you moved it to France, and then from France you ship it to the United States, that is country of origin China. Now, what defines country of origin? So first thing I'm going to say is speak to a trade lawyer. But in general, it is where the majority of the value is added. So for example, if you want to send your t-shirt to Mexico and then ask the Mexico warehouse to put it into a box, that is not called made in Mexico. Very little value was added in Mexico. Now things get more complex. What if I'm selling a blender? And the blender, the glass of the blender is made in China, but the razor of the blender that does the blending is made in Japan. You have a very good case to say, and even though it's put together in China, you have a very good case to say that that is country of origin Japan, because the highest value part of that product is Japanese. So, but you got to speak to a trade lawyer. So the extreme examples are obvious. You take fabric, you turn it into a shirt, wherever you made the shirt's country of origin. The other extreme that is obviously bad, if you have a completed product and you put it into packaging, that is not called country of origin. But there is a lot of middle areas. And for those middle areas, if you live in that middle area, watches with different components, speak to a trade lawyer. Try to figure out. But it's country manufactured, not country of ship.
Got it. So, what I'm thinking, like, if let's say I'm a brand, you're talking to me, you say, like, what can I do? I won't change. I'll wait for things to settle, but brands don't know how long to wait. I'll explore. Some are talking about, reducing the packaging. Like, this is efficiency times, like, you need to be efficient as much as possible. So some brands are, saying, like, Ronak Shah at Obby was saying something like they were exploring ways of optimizing their packaging to weight less, to be smaller as well, leaner, so lighter. So what are some of the things that brands can explore that it's really doable? Because as you said, like, brands are saying, you can store manufacturing in Vietnam, having the highest value parts. Now I know that coming from Vietnam, but it's like, is that doable? Will, like, I don't know any factories in Vietnam. I know factories in China. So I don't know, will the quality be the same? What will I sacrifice? Like, maybe it's cheap to keep the tariff, right? So what would you tell a brand to do as the next step?
Yep. So really kind of what you were saying is don't make any big moves in supply chain yet, because moving supply chain is very, very hard. And there's a lot of risk to moving supply chain. So wait for the administration to give better guidance. Until then, be as efficient as you possibly can within your current supply chain model. So, and look for areas like saving dimes and nickels, right? So I love that idea of making your packaging smaller. Like, do brands really need a big box around their product? Probably not. Lower your cost of shipping. In our model, if you could fit within our model, Portless can help you on a balance sheet. Like, don't pay your taxes day one. Delay your taxes. Speak to trade lawyers. See where you can reduce cost. Reduce cost on your software. Reduce cost on overhead, unfortunately. If you feel like that you maybe beefed up a little too much hiring, could you do more with less? AI exists. Maybe it's time to lean into AI and let AI do a lot of the jobs that were done before. This sucks, but you have to survive. Now, I was speaking to a brand, large brand, and he was actually saying there's a silver lining from his perspective. No one likes trade wars, but what's the silver lining? There's a ton of competition out there. Only the best operators and the ones that work the hardest and find efficiencies will survive. It might be, if you are the most efficient within your competitors, you might actually gain market share. So it is a time to roll up your sleeve. It is time to look at every single part, from cash flow or tax deferment, HS code analysis, removing packaging, running leaner. It is time to roll up your sleeve and optimize in place. Once the administration gives better guidance, and again, it sucks they're giving themselves 90 days, because now there's uncertainty for 90 days, which is very aggravating for a business owner. But let's just say finally there's going to be certainty, let's say. And let's just say it lands where maybe China won't be so bad. In that case, you keep going. But let's say China is horrible after 90 days. Then you're going to want to start making that decision of supply chain, but do it carefully. Start testing in, let's say, India. Test in Vietnam. How's the quality? How is the ramp-up speed? Because one thing is clear, and I've seen endless cases on LinkedIn and Twitter. Let's give an example. There is no ecosystem in the United States. I've seen someone try to manufacture, they do like these steel boxes. It cost them 5 times more in the United States. There's like no negotiation for volume. They're not willing to small MOQ. So onshoring is not going to happen, but there will be countries that are efficient. But even those countries, Vietnam, been doing it for 30 plus years. What is their capacity? Are they able to buy fabric from the local fabric mills? Do you need to buy fabric from the States? What is the max amount of units they can make in a month? So these are a lot of unknowns as you move to a new country. Test, explore. You have to educate yourself, explore, but then test. And then when you're in a position to ramp up, ramp up. But highly encourage people not to do that until there's better guidance from the administration.
So when you started talking, it's like we were talking last year that, in regards to things have been so hard for brands since COVID. It was the golden years, but ever since it was super hard, and brands needed to understand that it was another game they needed to play. It wasn't like put an ad, a product, and a website, and that's it. No, it's going back to the fundamentals. It's building the brand, being profitable, having positive cash flow, etc. But then when we all thought like 25 was going to be the year in which brands were going to, be, let's say, more, I don't know if relaxed is the world, but in peace and trying to build it up. I've had many interesting conversations in this pod and with the agency, last year, and everyone was talking about the same. It's like there was an inflection point. I think it was in 2023. As understood that they needed to go back to the basics. In 2024, they started implementing that. In 2025, but there was the election. Like, it was a shaky year as well. But then 2025, here we go, and now it's like, okay, I'm shifting away my focus from the next big thing, AI, these AI agents, like videos with AI or without them, like volume for Meta, Apple loving, like the conversations were that, like Apple loving, we were having fun between quotes, like let's explore the next big thing, channel diversification. And now it's like, wait, like forget about what we spend. Let's stop the bleeding. Like you go into survival mode. So that you were saying when you started that the operators need to be like the smartest one are going to survive. That was already true last year and the year before. Now it's like it's
like up that by 100 now. It's crazy.
Yeah,
but hopefully it gets settled soon. Like hopefully it gets settled soon. Because at the end of the day, if you're, let's say, like everyone thought the world was going to end with Vietnam at 46%, now they're at 10%, right? So it feels like Trump wants to get his negotiation other side right to the edge of the cliff and show them that, like, we could break you, give us a good deal. And hopefully he only goes to the edge of the cliff and stops there. China is starting to fall over the edge of the cliff because now it's the 11th. We're already 2 days into over 100% tariffs. If that lasts more than a couple weeks, he's going to put American business into bankruptcy. So I'm hoping he's trying to push China a little bit above the edge, but enough where he'll make a deal where it's similar to the other countries. And okay, we could all breathe a sigh of release. There was 3 days of chaos or a week of chaos, and there's more noise than there was actual dollars out of there. That's
for a minute. Let's play worst case scenario. What do you think would happen if this goes through and keeps? I don't know if this exact percentage, like 125 or something like that, but it's like something super high. Do you think that the U.S. will be in serious trouble?
It's essentially an embargo. I would say for brands that have incredible margins, could probably last a little bit longer. Like if you're in the jewelry business and you're buying your gold plated for $5 and selling it for 50, all right, you'll survive. So the high margin businesses will survive longer, but they're going to start shifting. China's going to lose those factories. Now you are seeing a lot of the Chinese owners because Chinese operators have been doing this the longest and they're the best at it. It is what it is. They are simply the best at it. They've been doing the longest. You're seeing them set up shop in Vietnam. So you might start seeing those factories say, hey, customers, come with me. Give me 60 days. I'll have an equivalent of flyover machinery and I'll be operational in Vietnam or I'll be operational in India. Not India. China, India doesn't do that. But I'll be operational in Vietnam in, let's say, 3 months. That's going to happen. So if this embargo keeps going, you're simply going to see you're going to have to go to China at some point, even in a high margin business. It just doesn't make sense otherwise.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I remember from, reading the Nike book, Shoe Dog. Amazing book, by the way. Well, they were originally manufacturing in Japan, or at some point they were manufacturing mainly in Japan, and then they switched to China before anyone else, where it was mainstream. So do you think that something like that might happen right now between China and Vietnam, or not?
It could be. It could be. Vietnam has been coming along pretty well, but they're nowhere near as efficient. They're probably 20 years away from being as efficient as China. Right. China has been, the Nike book was in the 70s when he moved, right? And Japan was like, after World War II, it took time to even start manufacturing. So Japan maybe had 15 years ahead of China, but now China from the 70s down to 2025 has about 50 years of manufacturing, and they're good at it. And that's an ecosystem that's hard to fight. Now, labor is cheaper than Vietnam. But labor is not the only component. You need ecosystems. You need to have embroidery suppliers. Like in the fabric ecosystem in Guangzhou, you'll have 100 embroidery suppliers and 50 people that could dye your fabric. And you could buy one roll at a time. That is not something that happens overnight. That takes 20 to 40 years to build. So Vietnam and India are tier 2 right under China, but they're not anywhere near China's ecosystem. They're just not. We're talking about quality. Forget about cost of labor. Cost of labor is cheaper. Quality, your end result, what your sweater, what your t-shirt will look like, it is not the same t-shirt. There are some factories in Vietnam could do it, but not at mass and not at scale.
And one of the last questions I have for you is are there any of any brand that you've been discussing this lately that is thinking about bringing the manufacturing into the US?
Not a single brand. No, not one. We've seen Vietnam. We have facilities in Vietnam. We're like, hey, we'll make introductions to factories. Here's a sourcing agent. Like, we'll help you get samples, ship it to you. But there's nothing in the United States. And you can just simply look at Twitter and X and LinkedIn, and you'll find countless of examples. I think the guy, Sean from Ridge Wallet, gave examples where he tried to manufacture stuff. The max he got was 5,000 a month. They sell 5,000 a day. So it just doesn't exist. It's not here. There's endless examples of, no, I don't see US. But I do think Trump will try to force national security products. So semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, I don't think we'll give them a choice. But mass consumer goods, ecosystem doesn't exist.
There's an investment going on in Arizona or so for semiconductors, like a factory or something like that. I heard. I don't know if the right state.
Yeah, I've got the name of the company, the Taiwanese owner that pretty much owns semiconductors. I think they're investing like $500 million, $500 billion, $500 billion into building semiconductors, and that's national security. And I agree with that. Like, whoever owns semiconductors owns AI of the future and owns smart drones. That makes sense. I get that.
This was great. I mean, I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience did too. Anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to mention before you go?
Not I can think of. I think I would say it's a very fluid environment right now, which is why I keep encouraging optimize in place. Again, it's April 11th. By the end of the day, things might be different. So let's see how things play out. But yeah, I think it's operators, it's a time to what you said, optimize. You might want to consider going international. CPMs are cheaper there. Cost per clicks are cheaper. There's good conversion rates in different countries around the world. But yeah, I would just say optimize and pinch those pennies and find savings and look for better opportunities over the next couple months until this settles.
Yeah, definitely these will help people, operate in a leaner way, in a smarter way. They've been doing that in the last few years, so it's nothing new. It's something else they need to do now, probably. But yeah, I mean, here in Argentina, where I live, we are used to the crisis, and we have learned the hard way that it's a roller coaster. You're down here, and then you're up here, and you create these opportunities if you know how to play the game. So this is a great opportunity for brands that know how to make the most out of this situation, because they can change the situation, they can change their approach to it. So I think that's the important part. Izzy, it was great to have you back on the show. Before you go, please tell the audience where they can go to learn more about you and Portless.
Awesome. They can learn about Portless at portless.com. We have tons of blogs, case studies, talk about tax strategies, podcasts, webinars. And then I post a lot of content on LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, Izzy Rosensweig. I'm posting multiple times a week on every day as things evolve. I'm pretty
Great
active
content, by the way. Yeah. Great
Thank
content. Okay, if you're listening to this, watching this right now, please, if you go to the DTCinsider.com, you will see the show notes if you're not already there, of course, including everything that we discussed. And of course, there will be the social handles and the Portless website as well. Izzy, thanks for reading the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.